T-minus 50 seconds. T-minus 40 seconds. T-minus 30 seconds. T-minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Good morning, and
Morning.
welcome everyone to the Keynote panel, where you'll hear from some of our amazing industries leaders and what their visions are for 2020. My name is Mary Catherine Buczkowicz, and I'm thrilled to be your moderator this morning. Without further ado, and with great pleasure, please let me introduce our keynote panelists. Bianca Kennedy, President of CAEM and Manager of Shows for Power Sports Services. Jasmine Baker, President and Founder, Event Management. Paula Perry, Vice President, Event Management. And Sasha Saladziak, Senior Manager, Catering Sales, Maple Leafs Sports and Entertainment. Welcome, ladies, and thank you for joining us this morning.
Good morning. Morning. Thank you for having us.
Wonderful. Let's get started. So the first question is, we would love to know how your companies have faced the challenges of COVID-19 and some of the ways you have adapted. This question is open for all panelists. Bianca, let's start with you.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. So for those on the session today who don't know what CAEM is, I'll just start with a quick update on that. So CAEM is the Canadian Association of Exposition Management. We are a not-for-profit association representing the trade and consumer show industry in Canada. So, needless to say, COVID-19 has absolutely had a major impact and a devastating one on our sector. In parts of the country, we are completely shut down still. So from a CAEM standpoint, we absolutely have had to adapt and literally change overnight. We were an association that mostly really focused on education and networking opportunities for our members. Faced with a prolonged and complete shutdown of our sector, though, we really overnight had to regroup and refocus on our mission and our priorities. And the last 6 months has been all about advocacy. We really weren't an association that focused heavily on advocacy in the past, but we've had to step up, we've had to learn a lot, and we've had to really come to the defense of our members in terms of what their needs are and really become the voice of our sector during this crisis.
Thank you, Bianca. Jasmine, Paula?
Paula, do you want to start or you want me to start?
Go ahead, buddy.
Okay. We both like to talk so much, so you never know, we have to be fair there to each other. How did we start? I mean, like most people, I think we were all incredibly shocked and taken aback to see what was happening to our industry and happening to the world as a whole. From the very beginning, like most, we tried to learn and just try to attend every webinar and listen to every podcast and find every resource we could to educate ourselves. So I'd say the first thing we did was look to educate ourselves so we could show up for our community and provide information. And that transitioned into creating newsletters of the top resources and information that we could find that we were sending out weekly to the industry. We also started an industry webinar where we were focusing on all areas of the business. We thought it was important to look at hospitality as a whole, not just the events business, simply because we felt we'd be taking our cues as event planners from hospitality. Hospitality would mobilize and open their doors first, and we would take learnings from that as we then found ways to gather. So I think that's about how we started. Paula, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, it was about learning and resetting and figuring. I think Bianca said it best as well, trying to reset and figure out how do you still serve your clients in this new landscape while you're trying to figure out a new way to operate as well. So it definitely was about learning to just and resetting and crying and laughing and then crying and laughing and all of that for a little while. Yeah,
exactly. There was so much unknown the first several months, and I too also took in whatever webinars I could, and because from every webinar I found there were several key points that you could take and kind of reflect and see how you could incorporate that into your business. So definitely feel like we're on the same page of taking in the webinars. What about you, Sasha?
I think one of the biggest things at the beginning is just relinquishing your control, right? Like that was kind of this is out of everyone's hands, right? And I think our industry, we always try to find a solution, or how do we move forward? We like to keep really busy. So MLSE, I'm in food and beverage. We look after so many different restaurants and venues, but we have a little bit of a unique experience. We actually were right back in our offices 2 weeks after shutdown. We turned to an essential service and kind of changed our thoughts into more of that care and like holistic. How do we build a community? And so we actually took our ice out of our arena and took over the 500,000 square feet that we had. And you kind of see the impact or the gaps, I would say, in our industry when we stopped. And the biggest thing for us was like shelters and communities. So we leveraged our space and we found out that there were a lot of partners who were really suffering, and we had a solution to their problem. So our relationship moved in a different direction, and we basically built a food program on the arena, producing 10,000 meals a day. That was kind of our priority, for the first couple of months, and then we rolled right into NHL Hub City. So this is my second week from home. So I have a lot of questions for everyone in this industry right now. This panel is obviously to educate everyone too, but it shows that we all have had unique experiences, and now I'm trying to adapt to that new normal that everyone's had for the past 4 months. So stay tuned for some questions on how to get through it too, right?
Thank you, Sasha. I really like what you said, that when we all stopped, we noticed the gaps in our industry. And I noticed that those gaps are people are talking about those gaps, and a lot of competitors are working together to fill those gaps and see how we can work together to move forward. So it's very powerful seeing the gaps when we stopped. The second question is, how did you stay motivated and motivate your teams during this time of uncertainty? Bianca?
So, for most of our members, the truth is we're fighting for survival here. So, survival is a pretty strong, motivating instinct, I think. All of us are really coming together to fight for our businesses, our jobs, and, an entire industry that has massive economic impact here. And we really just want to educate and get that message out, and work with government to help them understand, what we are. I think there's some misconceptions. And so, when it comes down to motivation, when it's about survival, I think that's a really strong one. The other thing in terms of just, the team and when it comes to CAEM, that really is what CAEM is. It's an industry team. Rallying around a common objective, I think is key. When you're in a crisis, really identifying what is that common objective that we are going after here, and how do we rally the troops around that so that we're all, going in the same direction. I think that common objective is a really important one.
Thank you. Jasmine, Paula?
Got you. So I think for us, the motivation came from kind of what we were talking about earlier. It's really just trying to dig in and do our research and stay informed. We tried to stay motivated. I think event planners, Sasha kind of mentioned it. You're always troubleshooting. You have to be fluid. You're always trying to problem solve. And it felt really frustrating at the beginning to not have a solve for this. So the way that we were able to stay motivated was by educating ourselves, checking in with our teams, checking in with our suppliers. I think really leaning into the community that we had around us and learning how do we re-educate ourselves, what are the trends that are happening. I tried to dig really deep into keeping up with the health protocols. How do we, like, if the more information that we could gather, it kept us motivated to say, okay, well, we can take this and all right, well, we could apply that in this way, and that could maybe help change this event and move it forward. And that was a really good way for us to kind of keep it moving. And we just tried to check in with our teams. I mean, there are some days where it was hard to be motivated. Jazz always joke about we want to be like poly positivity, like, okay, guys, we could do it. And then sometimes you just want to feel a little sad that it's happening. So I think we just tried to have a real balance of being positive, learning, keeping motivated, keeping our community strong, keep it going, but then also taking the breaks when we needed it to kind of take that breath and figure out how to fuel ourselves to move forward. Yeah, I don't know, Jazz, is there anything to add?
Yeah, I of course, Paula was really good at reminding us about these mental health check-ins, and that it was incredibly difficult for all of us at times. And I think one of the things that I learned from Paula during this time is to leave space and hold space for those mental health check-ins and for each other to just be upset and share fears and share concerns and give them light, get them out into the world so that we can talk them through and be there for each other. So it was a very, I don't know if I speak for both of us, but I think we wanted to take a very human approach to this major business challenge and really just be there for each other. We also, we took one of our in-person events, which interestingly enough, it's called the Breakfast Club, and it was a morning meetup for professional women in the city of Toronto. And the last one was on March 11th. So wow. Right before things shut down in Toronto. And we decided right after quarantine hit that we were going to take it online. So between our small team, we brought this event online, and we just brought in all these great wellness speakers and really inspiring women to show up for our community, just so that we all had a place to come together once a week, share a cup of coffee, and talk about the things that were challenging and scary, and for all of us to just recognize that we weren't alone and we were all feeling these same things.
Thank you for mentioning that. I feel that we're all, hospitality professionals, event professionals, we all have these superpowers where we can keep going. And then, of course, we all get that burnout day or that burnout week where we must reset. But usually when we do that, we end up being sick. We have to take a couple of sick days, or it always turns out, you have your vacation booked and you're sick on your vacation because of the go, attitude that we have when we're working. So taking a time to breathe and just healing from all that, and also calling, colleagues and seeing how are you doing. And we can't all have amazing days. We can't be giving 150% each day. We must take those days to heal and reset. So I feel like at the beginning of the pandemic, although there was a lot of unknown, we were forced to take a breather. We were forced to take that time to heal and think about how we can move forward and give that 150%, but also make sure that we're not burning out as quickly as we do sometimes. Sasha?
Yeah, I would say to Jasmine and Paul, that human element, right? So I remember we had, there's been so much change in it since the beginning of January, right? And I remember we had a day of reflection, and it was for Black Lives Matter, and not to bring up politics, but it was a day of reflection for all of us. We were all upset, and we just wanted to create this space. And so within our food and beverage team, we just all got on a call, and it was just a safe space. And we created this virtual environment. Some people were in office, some people weren't. And, we just it's okay to be vulnerable. I think that, we always put on this tough face sometimes. And especially, as women too, for the perception of being emotional. But what I loved about kind of the change of all of this is we just allowed us to be more human. I love seeing that someone, is such a dog lover, someone who has kids, you are patient. I think that's the biggest thing too, is we need to be kinder to ourselves and be more patient. And every day it's a battle, right? So, as we see that we might be progressing more of in a positive way, we kind of get back to our old self. So just with reminders that I tell my team, pick a couple of things that make you feel happy. Don't feel bad because, you're not working 12-hour days or whatnot. So just be a little kinder to yourself. And then one of the other things is just celebrate the little wins. Recognition, in all of this is super important. And it actually brought, I think, my team better together because we're more patting each other on the back or, I'm in today, I'll take care of that for you. That's just a nice stress release for everyone. And it shows that support more.
Thank you. So we're now 6 months into the new normal, which is crazy to say that we have a new normal. Do you have any more certainty in what your plans are for 2020? And if so, do you mind sharing, Jasmine and Paula?
Sure, give us a tough one to start with. I really want to hear what Bianca had to say about this. Okay, I'll start.
Anyone on this panel have any certainty? Can I just put my hand up? I would love to know if anyone anywhere has any certainty because Yeah,
listen, I have to say, I'm going to gush a little bit for a second, but I've never been more grateful to have a business partner and a leader like Paula Perry to work with and go through this together. Your community and your relationships are everything. And when you have close people and people that you work with in business, like someone like Paula, it makes it all doable. She has taught me a lot. And together, I think we've learned that we have to continue to save space and hold space for mental health and everybody's well-being. We will, although I have no certainty of what our business will look like, I can tell you that we are more committed to our business values and who we want to be and how we want to show up for our community than ever. We have already started declining business because those businesses don't share our values. And we only want to align ourselves who consider social justice matters and equality and environment and, and a few other things, but essentially we want to make sure that people share these values and they prioritize them. And those are the people that we will hitch our wagons to. We kept saying at the beginning that, we're all starting over. We're essentially all rebuilding our businesses. So if we're going to start from scratch, what do we want to be doing? Who do we want to be? How do we want to show up? So that is the questions that we keep asking ourselves. So that's what I'm sure of as far as everything else. I don't know. I mean, Paula, do you have any certainties you want to share?
Man, I'm certain that I love my nona's gnocchi. I'm certain that I love, I think it's to your point, that the certainty becomes in the business values and kind of how we want to move forward. And the certainty is that everything is uncertain. We're trying to plan ahead, and then you get an announcement from the government that gatherings are slashed. So you're like, okay, so no, we're not doing that plan. So the only thing that seems to be certain is that we're having to be continually evolving and fluid. And so I think Jess said it all.
It's hard to make plans. I mean, we're already September 21st, and I said plans for the rest of 2020. 2020 is almost done, and I feel like we're all having to be a little anxious because the rules and regulations are not clearly defined and they're always changing. So how can we plan for next year? How can you plan your events with your clients for next year if you don't know what the regulations are going to be? Do you have any tips on how you do that, or just, or do you have plans A, B, and C, and D?
That's just it. We've been working with one client where we're planning 3 different scenarios in tandem of like, okay, so what would happen if it was this scenario? What happens if it's this? What happens if we have to just flip it virtual? And what do we do? And so it's literally having to kind of think about every option and every scenario until you know what trigger can be pulled. And it's tricky. It's tricky. That's how we've been doing it. I don't know for the rest of the panelists.
Sasha?
Well, obviously we just came off of hosting NHL Hub, so that's a very unique experience. We had 2 weeks to basically plan an Olympic-sized tournament. So there's no playbook out there on how to do an event, how to do a sporting event. In the sense, it's all trial and error, and luckily we were able to pull it off successfully with no health issues, learning as you're going, and that really did set us up to have a playbook for the future, right? Just how do we scale that? And obviously cross-border travel can be challenging, but I think one of the biggest things is that we still know that friends are there and that people still want to come together. So we've had a beautiful summer. A lot of things are outdoors, created a drive-in for movie experience. Now it's what does that look like when we can return to a regular season indoors, right? And what do people feel comfortable with? I think we were lucky to pull it off. We can put players together safely, staff still able to deliver an experience. Just how do we now scale that to great, clients and obviously parameters of the company. So we beat to death many scenarios that you can't control, and one thing you can count on is change.
Thank you. Do you have any tips for others who are struggling to shift their priorities, set new priorities, and pivot their business? You had mentioned, Jasmine, earlier that your breakfast club that you already thought of ahead of time, just before the pandemic, making it a virtual event. Any tips for anybody, thinking about going virtual or just really pivoting their business to accommodate the next little while of this new norm before we have the new regulations and procedures in place from the government?
Yeah, I think first of all, virtual is not as scary as it seems. I know we're all used to producing events where people can come together, but let's look at these virtual platforms as our new venues, and let's use our creative brains to create engaging experiences in a virtual realm. I believe that we're all going to run together when we can. And that is just human nature. We are social beings. But I believe that there is a great opportunity for a lot of brands and a lot of events to explore a greater reach by going virtual because the accessibility is there. I think that there's a lot of excitement in technology. I have always been, Paula, it took her a very long time to get me to even want to work with Google Sheets. But I'm there, and now that we're finding all these great ways of using technology, whether it be virtual event platforms or project management software, we are finding so many opportunities to explore. So I think that the technology is something that we all need to embrace. And those tips, as Paula said earlier, having these contingency plans it's what we do as planners. We've always had contingency plans, but now we have to have fully formed, ready to go options ABC. But that technology, I think, is the opportunity. And I think we've had a lot of success in reaching a much bigger audience through technology. When we were doing the industry webinar series, we had people coming from Australia, from Morocco, people that we never would have interacted with before. So I think that there's a lot of great opportunity to cultivate there. Paula, do you want to add?
Sure. I think tips I think what felt scary at first was, it felt like a new space. It's like, oh gosh, I'm not technologically inclined. How am I going to do this? How am I going to deliver a 10 out of 10 product for a client that I'm used to in person? And then you realize the skill set that I think that planners and hospitality individuals have, it's all the same. It's all the same bones. You know how to work back, you know how to deliver content, you know how to get your arms around things and juggle a million balls in the air to make sure that you're delivering. So it was kind of learning a new application of those skills. But I think so for tips, anyone who's struggling to move virtual, not be afraid. You do actually have the skills to do it. It's just applying them in a new way. That's what we found anyway.
Thank you. I think my colleague Chris wants to say a few things. He's also on stage with us now. Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, hi. I've just been listening to your conversation and creating some illustrations which will be available after the event. So it's really interesting. So I'm going to just carry on drawing.
Thank you, Chris. That looks amazing. Look
Awesome.
at ladies, all the things we've mentioned. Virtuality is not scary. The certainty is everything is uncertain. Yeah, that's great. Reset and re-educate ourselves. Absolutely. Absolutely. Wonderful. Thank you. And you, Sasha, would you like to mention anything about any tips for others who are struggling to set new priorities to pivot their business? I find, with such a large company as MLSE, there's so many, different departments and different people you need to collaborate with and discuss to move forward. I know with our team, it's a small team, and when we have to move forward with a new idea or a new concept or anything like that, we have our quick meeting and, if we all agree, we move forward. But with your company, there's a lot of moving parts. And so have you experienced anything like that where having such a large team, is perhaps taking longer to make some of those decisions? Or do you find that people are on the same page and just, moving forward as quickly as they can?
Yeah, I think now with us, moving out of Post Hub and, we were on site, but the challenge was we were only allowed to have so many people working on it. So social distancing, daily COVID tests, you're in zones, you're out of zones. And one thing that I realized was when I made a decision, just the impact that it made on other departments. So the impact, didn't send that email at a certain time, how that would affect someone else on the other, and how that would affect the evening, how would that affect the ice quality, all those different layers. Where I feel like before, everything was just harmoniously coming together because we're all operating. And when you restart your business, it's not about those gaps, but it's just thinking from a really bigger perspective, and how you need them just as much as they need you to be able to reach that common goal. So, for us at the beginning of, when players came into town, how did things work on paper, and then when you actually get on site, how everything kind of just related again. And then as well too, don't be shy to build better partners. Even though if you're with a client, being very honest and ask them, what are your opinions on this? Do you think this is a product that you'd like? Something that you would see beneficial down the road in 6 months? Is there anything that you're missing right now? We're all in this together and on both sides. So I think one thing we learned about when we were going through that, the teams, they were just on that nervousness as we were to make it perfect. And so we were both on a common level about finding solutions together. That made it a success. I'd love for people to translate that later down the road too. Don't beat around the bush.
Thank you. And Bianca, we actually have a question directly for you from an attendee. Jason Bonney a few seconds ago said, I recently read the Australian government is starting 50 million a grant to help the events industry. Have we been actively lobbying in Canada with the government to help our industry? Can you tell our audience a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So CAEM, as I mentioned, our complete shift in priorities over the last 6 months has been exclusively advocacy and lobbying. For the last couple of months, I'd say our main focus has really been on advocating for the reopening of our sector. So developing safe reopening guidelines, getting those in front of the right ministries and public health, and really starting to engage in conversation with government about how the exposition sector certainly can absolutely play a key role in restarting the economy safely. So that has been our main focus. Having said that, as we see in certain parts of the country a prolonged shutdown past certainly the timeline that we were hoping, our task force, and I should say CAEM, pretty early on in May, actually formed what we called the Exposition Recovery Task Force to really hone in on these priorities. We are now regrouping and starting to discuss and strategize around what we can do to perhaps shift some of our attention or put more attention and resources towards advocating for more relief and more support for our sector. So, you know, whether that's sector specific funding, I mean, that's certainly something we would like to do. The federal government has been pretty clear on the fact that they are focused on sector agnostic funding. And so, you know, we really do need to get creative here in terms of what we want to ask for and how we ask for it, whether that's, extension to some of the programs that are in place, but as well, you know, definitely exploring what opportunities there might be for sector specific funding as well. So definitely it's been on our radar and will continue to be moving forward. It's CAEM's #1 priority.
Thank you. Yes, a grant of 50 million does sound really nice right about now. Fingers crossed. Our next question is, our business revolves around bringing people together. To move forward, we'll have to make health and safety the first concern, but we want to do this without risking the quality and experience of the event. Can you share some examples of how you've accomplished this or how you plan to incorporate this into your business? Jasmine, Paula?
Sure. It's tricky. It's, so for example, one of our clients is an international beer festival, and it got canceled this year like everything else. But one thing that we were talking about, we've had to really, and I don't want to sound negative, but one thing we had to really think about is, what was the customer experience going to be like? Could you actually have an event where you're tasting beer and hanging out and going to see music with only, 6 feet apart, and how do we serve it? And you had to take your mask on and mask out. So I think that there are some events where we're going to have to wait until it is fully safe to be together like we used to be to execute them. On the other hand, we're coming up with really creative solutions as an industry and as a whole for these smaller events. We're working within the parameters that were in the health guidelines and that the government lets us know we can work with. So I've seen really, the mask with the clear mouth so that you can feel more engaged with people. People are used to do flower crowns, now you're decorating your own mask. You're finding ways to incorporate those things in smaller ways so that people feel comfortable. I think that's the biggest thing that our industry has to face too, is it's instilling confidence in ticket holders and attendees to come back, that you have to show that you're doing everything to keep them safe, that you've got the sanitizers, you've got the masks, that you're taking care of the capacity, the temperature checks are happening. The struggle also, and a reality that we have to face, is those things often cost money. And as we know, our large events are running on thin margins already to be able to execute. So it's finding a really delicate balance on how to integrate it. I know that that's not a real answer to the question. I've just kind of explained the roadblocks that I'm facing, but truly it is trying to find the balance between those, getting people comfortable to feel safe, making it work for the budget, and operating within the guidelines without taking away the fun of why we even gather together in the first place. So to be honest, all of our events have gone virtual for this year. So we've not had to come up against the integrating, PPE into a live event just yet. But yeah, I don't know. Jazz, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think it all starts with health and safety. I think that was one of the first eye openers that we had when COVID hit, was that it all starts with health and safety. So we really invested a lot of time in educating ourselves in everything from sanitation to public health to medical safety to protocols. And we are now, as we are starting to explore different event scenarios, we are speaking to suppliers who share those same values and have really educated themselves on health and safety, so that we know that together we can develop plans that have health and safety as the basis. Because you have to start there. You can't design anything. You can't design an experience, a room, anything, unless you have considered health and safety first. The other thing that I would add is again, we're all creative people. That's why we like this business, or one of the reasons, hopefully. But it's getting creative and rethinking things. It's like the name of today's session. We are rethinking. And so we have found a couple things. So we did some consulting for a dynamic venue downtown Toronto called Stacked Market, which is actually uniquely equipped to host outdoor events because so much of their infrastructure is outdoors. In any case, what we discovered with them is that we could actually, while we can't do the beer festivals that we were used to doing, we could do tasting experiences because the guests could be seated at tables, classroom style, 6 feet apart, with their own tasting items in front of them, focused on the person who is teaching them, leading the tasting. And this allows us to have a collective experience, but still be socially distant. So there are lots of things that are in our repertoire. We all have to do some unlearning in terms of the things that we're used to doing, the things that maybe we're excited about, and looking at things through a different lens. And I believe that if we all do our part to educate ourselves on health and safety and what protocols need to be, I think we can get there. I will also say, just on health and safety, this is not going away. Even when we do have a vaccine in place, we need to inspire confidence with our guests and with our clients by ensuring that there are protocols in place. So even when there's a vaccine, we're going to be worried about the next pandemic or the next health issue. And that's where we're going to have to make sure that we have plans that consider all of this.
Exactly. And with the masks and the additional safety procedures, that opens a whole new door for sponsorship. You know, we've had a lot of partners and sponsors come up to us and say, we want to sponsor your masks for next year. We want to sponsor the hand sanitizer for next year. So that's really interesting new conversations we're having. And I feel that now that we want to, give our attendees a great experience, but with the masks and with the distancing, we ourselves need to go through some, mock events or some real events that are happening right now and go through it ourselves and figure out, does this make me feel safe? Does this make me feel good? Am I still able to enjoy myself? Mm-hmm. Take all those learnings and then incorporate that into our own events.
Absolutely.
Yes, Bianca.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, in terms of when CAEM came together to put our safe reopening guidelines together, while health and safety absolutely was our number one priority, when we were looking at the different measures that we could put in place, we absolutely looked at it through the lens of what does this mean for our exhibitors? What does this mean for our visitors? And what does this mean for us? You really have to look at the viability of the model. And yes, health and safety is absolutely the number one priority. But there is viability here as well. And we have to think about that, because putting forward a plan that isn't something we can execute on realistically isn't a long-term solution either. And to Jasmine's point, some of these measures might be in place for a long time. So we need to think about what we are putting forward. And that was at the forefront of what we did with our work, was to absolutely prioritize health and safety, but really look at it from the lens of the user's experience and make sure that we aren't compromising all of that in the process either. The balance is really key.
I think a point to add, sorry to interrupt there, but just you, like as an individual, as someone who works in events, we have to really be the strong people to understand what the government is saying. There's been many times I don't know what this means. Like how do the rules work? So we have to kind of hold hands, understand what the government's telling us, and then explaining it properly to give them that confidence too. It's one thing I've really learned is just they don't understand what's on paper versus like what they actually can do. Even on Hub and just with people who are looking for private dining options or opening up back restaurants again. How do you take that legal language and not make it so legal, but still obviously safe, and leveraging that to still create the experience. I find that some people still have that disconnect of what does that mean?
Exactly. There's a disconnect. I wanted to mention, Paula, you had talked about the masks with their clear plastic over the mouth. which allows us to see the person smile. And you know, that's such a big part of our business, welcoming our attendees, our exhibitors, our vendors, you know, welcome, and seeing that smile. So I have a feeling these masks will become very popular. Do any of you see any big emerging trend or trends taking place now, other than, you know, perhaps, you know, the masks with the shield, adding, you know, a hat or a flower crown? Any other trends you've seen or heard of? Anybody?
I think it's, go, please.
Great. One thing I saw, and it was, if you were at an event, it was just like the wristband. So if you're doing a hybrid event or whatnot, you had a wristband of how you like to be approached or talked to, or like, I'm, you know, 6 feet away, or don't try to elbow bump me, you know, just those. It was a nice, cute indicator of how I would like to interact in the actual event. And I thought that was just like a nice, cute way of introducing it without, you know, saying it, right? So you picked your option as you entered your event. And then I think too is just from our standpoint, we follow the rules of NHL, NBA, and the kind of the best practices globally for that. So when we were in Hub, you know, the handkerchief is not something that is deemed optically safe looking, even though it's still a face covering. So I think, you know, put yourselves in your customer's shoes, stay loyal to your brand and what type of, you know, offering we have premium products, so we'd like to try to keep that consistent. And also it's important to make sure your staff feel absolutely safe in whatever option that's. So that's
I wanted to add that I believe that supporting community, supporting charities, and doing something more with your money is, I think, going to be a trend in how consumers want to spend their money. I think the supporting local, supporting charitable organizations, although I said that we will run when we can gather again, I think people want to know that a portion of that money is going to a cause that they believe in. And I think that is something that will continue on.
Absolutely, I agree. You know, incorporating, like you said, the charities and really being mindful of what additional impact we can do and we can support while we run our events. I think that's fantastic. I know we have a few minutes left before we finish. This is my favorite question for some reason. I love it. So if you could go back, what advice would you give yourself in March of 2020? Bianca?
So I thought about that question quite a bit, actually. I think I would say, you know, as much for back then as for now, to just trust my instincts. I think we've all become very reliant on getting our information right now, and not suggesting we don't, but of course from government and what the directives are. And of course we need to follow that, and, you know, not suggesting we don't. But within that information, I think we have instinctual inclinations of how things might progress or where we might be going. And I don't think we want to ignore that in the face of really constantly being told what to do and how to do things. We have to respect that. But within that framework, I think really just re-tapping into our instincts here is important, because I think they are valuable. I think they can guide you. You know, we talked about uncertainty. I think there's a lot of that, and we all want to be able to find some answers in terms of uncertainty. So tapping into your instincts, you know, as much a couple months ago, things that I sort of thought that maybe I ignored have since come to fruition. Just continuing to check back in with yourself and check in with those instincts.
Paula?
Bianca, that's a great answer. I feel the same. I think trusting your instinct, advice I give myself, oh my gosh. I think that it's also to trust your relationships, trust your community and the process. I think it was quite overwhelming for everybody. There's a lot of fear that entered in, right? It's like, it's not a fun thing to look at your calendar of business disappear over, you know, like in a matter of weeks. So the uncertainty that I think we felt in March, the advice that I think I could give us is just to trust our community. I've never seen a more resilient group of people other than event and hospitality professionals to kind of see how everyone was able to turn on a dime, and restaurants are doing restaurant boxes, event planners are doing events in a box. You know, we figured out how to move to virtual within a span of a couple of weeks. Like, I think that the reminder that it will be okay, that we are a community that doesn't quit, and that we have each other to kind of lean on is that reassurance I could have used in March when I was having those dark days. Yeah.
Thank you, Paula. Sasha?
I just say be kind to yourself, right? You're going to have good days and bad days. I think that's one thing that, has really shown for everyone is just looking after yourself and looking after your loved ones, your community. And then, we're an organization that was always in venue. It was like, why do you need to go outside? Right? And now this has totally changed our whole mindset and propelled us to actually do things that we said we probably wouldn't do, because we're all about a button and feet or watching that experience at home. And, your possibilities are literally endless. And, you don't have all the answers. It's everyone else through that collaboration that you're able to achieve new things and adapt to the circumstances.
Thank you so much. That brings our keynote panel with industry leaders to an end. That was way too quick. I think we need to add another hour to this. Thank you so much, Bianca, Jasmine, Paula, and Sasha, for sharing your time, most importantly, and your journeys and your insights. We so much appreciate it. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining this session. We hope you have a wonderful day. And please get ready for our next session, Audio-Visual Needs for a Socially Distant World. Before we finish, hopefully our colleague Chris will come back online and will show us his wonderful art that he's been working on from the amazing topics that we've covered today. Oh, unfortunately, we've lost him. That's the beauty of internet, but we'll make sure we post it on Hopin later on and send it to everyone via email. Thank you so much, ladies, and hoping everybody has a wonderful day. Thank you for joining us.
Bye. Enjoy the event.
Thank you.
Oh, here we have him. I think he's coming back.
That's so fun.
Sorry, I'm back.
Beautiful.
No problem.
Yeah, with a certain uncertainty.
That's amazing.
Gorgeous.
Thank you, Chris. It gives us a lot to read through and think about one more time. Thank you so much. Everybody have a great day.
Bye. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.